If we get 5 biblical scholars in one room together, we'd have 6 opinions on what these texts mean. Welcome to the second video in a series that I'm doing for LGBT charity Seventh-day Adventist Kinship. This spring I'll be giving 5 online classes on the 7 Bible texts that people weaponize against LGBT people. The classes are available for anyone interested in learning more and exploring LGBT affirming readings of the Bible. The link is in the description below if you want to join. For those who cannot attend, I'm recording these short videos. Welcome to Deconstructing the Clobber Texts. Leviticus 18 and Leviticus 20 contain 2 extremely famous texts used against LGBT people. Both of these texts are very similar, and there's not much variation in how these texts are translated in the Bibles. For Leviticus 18, whatever Bible you grab, you'll have something along the lines of, "You shall not lie with a man as with a woman. It is an abomination." And this is the Bible text where the common association of homosexuality with abominations come from. Leviticus 20 is a little bit longer, and most Bibles have something along the lines of, "If a man lies with a male as with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They will be put to death. Their blood will be on their own heads." Now, all translations are making a number of interpretive steps here to arrive at this wording. The translation of this passage that is given in most English Bibles is not the most obvious one, and I think it is fueled by a long tradition of homophobia in Christianity. So let's explore these passages in some detail. Let's look at the various ways they have been understood, and at the end I will suggest some anti-homophobic reading strategies for a number of opinions about the texts. But first, what do I think? Well, I think these passages are 2 of many in Leviticus that are concerned with a man's seed or sperm. There is an ongoing concern about the procreative habits of the Israelites in the context of the Holy Land and Israel as a holy and clean nation. And this statute is but one in a large range that show concerns for Israelites creating children who will be part of the covenant and creating children who are suitable to be part of the covenant. In other words, I think these statutes fit into a narrative of strengthening the nation by having as much suitable children as possible. In this context, it is not vital to know if the text condemns homosexuality, homoeroticism, or any other type of sexual act, as the ancient context is incomparable to the modern Christian one. Nevertheless, it's clear to me that this passage is not referring to homosexuality in any meaningful way. There may be a reference to anal penetrative sex between men, but that too, I think, might not be the case. I feel that Bible translators and scholars have read their own homophobia into these passages. Not only that, by reading homophobia into the Bible, they are recreating God in their own homophobic image. How did I get to these opinions, you ask? Well, let me tell you. But first, I do this work for free because I believe in the cause. But sadly, I also need to eat. If you like what I do and want to support me in this and other endeavors, please support me on Patreon. On that website, you can give me a few pounds or euros or dollars or whatever currency every month so I can keep working for important causes fighting against injustice. If you can't support me financially, no worries. Share the word, change the world. Back to Leviticus. To properly understand these passages, we need to ask ourselves 3 questions, and each of these questions have many answers. The first question we really need to ask ourselves is, what does the Hebrew mean? What exactly is Leviticus opposed to? Once we've established what that could be, we'd want to ask the question, well, why is it forbidden? What can the context of the text tell us about the reason for its inclusion in these laws? And then finally, in a Christian context, we'd want to ask, well, how can Christians interpret these passages nowadays? The Hebrew of this text is simple yet tricky. A literal translation of the text is quite easy to make, and no one really disagrees on that aspect of it. Literally, it reads, "You will not lie down with a male, the beddings of a woman." The issue here is that the phrase, "the beddings of a woman," is rather unclear, and interpretations vary. Some say it means you should not have sex with a man like you would with a woman. In other words, it's talking about penetrative sex. Others say, well, it's about penetration, but it's about who can penetrate whom. Others say, well, it might be about men having sex in their marital bed with other men. And some say, well, maybe it's about two men having sex with one woman. When I told one of my colleagues that I was going to try to explain this text, she wryly remarked that if we get 5 biblical scholars together in one room, we'd have 6 opinions on what it means. And this is the problem. Ultimately, and I cannot stress this enough, we simply don't have enough evidence to truly understand what the beddings of a woman mean. But let me share what little evidence we do have. Judges and Numbers use a similar phrase to Leviticus, referring to the bed of a male. Both texts divide women into those who have known the bed of a male and those who have not known the bed of a male. And we're clearly here talking about finding the virgins from amongst the women. Now, there are some issues with the Numbers and Judges text. There the bed is singular, whereas in Leviticus it's plural. And Leviticus uses the word woman, but Judges and Numbers use the word male. Woman and male are not of the same category. We'd expect male and female, man and woman. So we don't exactly know what to do with that, but it gives us a bit of context. Using that, we can make some educated guesses. And there are 2 common educated guesses about what the beddings of a woman means. Maybe the phrase known the bed of a man means to have sex with a man. Then in Leviticus, where it says know the bed of a woman, that would mean have sex with a woman. If this is the case, then we could paraphrase Leviticus like this: you will not have sex with a woman with a male. In other words, the text then seems to be forbidding either a threesome or 2 men having sex with one woman in some way. And this is the first option for what the text could mean. Other people argue that Numbers and Judges aren't talking about that aspect of sex, but to know the bed of a male means to be penetrated sexually. Then knowing the bed of a female would be to penetrate someone sexually. If this is the case, then the text would read something different. Then it would say, you will not penetrate a male. This means that the text would be commanding the men of Israel not to have penetrative sex with other males. Finally, the text could refer to any sexual activity between 2 men. The logic for this would be the same as the one that led to the Bible translations that we all have. Lying the beddings of a woman means to have sex like you would normally have with a woman. So to recap, scholarly opinions are divided. The most common ones are Leviticus forbids all homoerotic sex, Leviticus forbids penetrative sex, Leviticus forbids the men of Israel having sex with other males, and Leviticus forbids 2 men from having sex with a single woman. Besides this difficulty, there are other bits of the passage that are much clearer. We learn that the sexual act is an abomination, which needs an entire video to explain, but the short version is abominations aren't as bad as you think they are. They're bad, but not very. And finally, and this is misunderstood by many people, the final part, dying they will be put to death, is not a punishment per se, but it seems more to be a statement about God's reaction to what will happen. So we see a huge range of options. Question number 2. Why is it forbidden? Well, a common answer we may hear is that homoeroticism is evil. God just doesn't like it. God is homophobic. And this answer removes these 2 verses from their context and makes them universal, but doesn't do the same with all the others in those chapters. An alternative we often hear is that Leviticus is talking about some specific same-sex acts that were common in the nations around Israel, thinking of things like male rape or sexual worship at temples. Or Leviticus is worried about procreation and the Israelite nation. Now, these chapters of Leviticus are interested in the setting apart of Israel from the nations around them. If we look at chapter 18, the introduction to the chapter is all about the Israelites following the Lord's statutes and not those of the Egyptians and the Canaanites. The chapter then lists a bunch of prohibitions, all of which are related to the seed of the Israelites. The first 13 or so are about procreating with family members. Then there's a prohibition about having sex with a menstruating woman, having sex with your neighbor's wife, giving your seed to Molech, this Clobber Text that we're looking at, and then having sex with animals. The chapter then concludes with a long section about how the Israelites should not defile the land through these actions. If they do, the land itself will reject them and will vomit them out, like the promised land rejected the Canaanites. The key term in that section is the term defile, which occurs 6 times in 6 verses. Now, defile doesn't mean a whole lot for us nowadays, but it's a technical term for to become ritually unclean. Like happens a lot in the Old Testament. Whenever you touch blood or semen or death, you become unclean. And a bit of uncleanness is fine, and there is a little that you can do about becoming unclean, but you can solve it by doing certain ritual actions. But if the uncleanness gets too much, then it becomes a problem. If the temple were to become too unclean, then God would depart from it. If the nation of Israel would become too unclean, God would depart from there too. If the land of Israel became too unclean, God would leave it. Now, clean and unclean is a much longer story, and I might do a video about it if people are interested. Leave a comment below. But basically, things related to the forces of life and death are potentially unclean, and things that are mixed, like cotton and linen. Unclean cleans are not necessarily bad, they're just unclean. And many of the procreative acts in these chapters of Leviticus are either unclean or would lead to unclean children. So how does this chapter then help us understand why the Clobber Text forbids whatever it's forbidding? Well, the introduction and the conclusion to the chapter talk about Israelites not being like the nations around it. So maybe it's got something to do with forbidding things that are going on around them by the Canaanites and the Egyptians. We don't have any or much evidence what that could be, but it's possible that that's what's going on. What I think is much more likely is that it's interested in the seed of the Israelites and procreation. The entire chapter is invested in the Israelites as a nation that can hold its own. The Israelite seed should become bountiful, and this means that the seed of Israelite men should be put to proper use. No incestuous children, no seed sent to other gods, no illegitimate children with your neighbor's wife, no sex with animal, and this Clobber Texts. If it's about homoeroticism, then it fits very well, because homoerotic sex is generally not procreative, and Leviticus wants the Israelites to procreate. If the Clobber Text is about 2 men with 1 woman, then the issue would be legitimacy. Who is the father of the child? And it would be exactly the same thing as sleeping with your neighbor's wife. So with this context, we can think a bit more deeply about the reasons why. One reason that homoeroticism is evil, that God just doesn't like it, well, that seems very superficial to me, because it doesn't do much with the theology of Leviticus. It doesn't take the context of the verses into account. The other option, that Leviticus is talking about specific same-sex acts that were common in the nations around Israel, let's say male rape or sexual worship at temples, well, it's possible. I think it's less likely. We don't have a lot of evidence that there were all manner of homoerotic things going on in the time, so it's hard to say. What is easy to say is that Leviticus is worried about procreation in the Israelite nation, and this fits much better. The chapter is about seed and about being a clean nation for God. Having a lot of children born from uncleanness, or a lot of children that are potentially unclean, or not having a lot of children, all of those things would not benefit the nation and would defile it. And then the land would reject them, as it did the Canaanites. So let's tackle the final question. Are these reasons still of interest for Christians nowadays? Well, if you think that the reason it's forbidden is because homoeroticism is evil, then that is of interest. But myself, as an anti-homophobic reader of the Bible, I would really want some more evidence and more proof that that is exactly what Leviticus is saying. I would suggest that there are many other options about what is being forbidden. And I'm definitely not comfortable taking a dodgy reading of 2 texts with unclear language that has many possible meanings and using that to stigmatize an entire group of people. If Leviticus, on the other hand, is talking about specific acts from the neighboring nations that are evil, for example, rape or sexual worship, okay, then we can easily agree that these passages have nothing to do with the LGBTQ community specifically. Rape is bad no matter who is involved, and worshipping other gods is not part of Christian practice. But these are other issues and not part of the discussion about LGBT. Finally, If the texts stem from a worry about the procreation of the Israelite nation and maintaining a clean nation for God, this also seems hardly applicable for Christian contexts. Christian theology does not really engage with the concepts of clean and unclean. Christians do not avoid the other regulations from Leviticus about clean and unclean, so it's very peculiar to pick out this single text. Ultimately, I think for Christians it is important to note that these two texts are hard to interpret. They do not address homosexuality and maybe don't even address any form of homoeroticism, and they are hardly applicable within Christianity. Yet they are used to exclude members of the Christian community from truly fundamental Christian values such as love, marriage, and community. And this is a failing of Christian communities. I strongly feel that they let their own homophobic thinking override the Bible on this. And even worse, in doing this, they are recreating a loving and accepting God in their own homophobic image. And that's a real shame. If you enjoyed it, like it, share it, leave a comment, but please, no homophobia below. Expect more videos to come based on my online classes. If you want the classroom experience, you are most welcome. Register with the link below. And then, a final reminder, I do this work for free because I believe in the cause, but sadly I also need to eat. If you like what I do and want to support me in this and other endeavors, you can support me on Patreon. On the website, you can give me a couple of euros, a couple of dollars, a couple of pounds every month, and then I can keep working on these important causes, fighting injustice. If you can't support me financially, absolutely no worries. Share the word, change the world.